Hello from Jihad and the World, presented by Kensington Security Consulting, where we bring education to national security. Today we will discuss the general friction between Italy's Muslim and non-Muslim communities and Rome's policy towards Hamas. Until the American-Israeli war on Iran, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni had positioned Italy as one of the more pro-American European states and less hostile to Israel than most. Immediately after the Hamas attacks on October 7, 2023, she expressed sympathy for the Israeli victims. She then vacillated and called for a de-escalation of hostilities. She feared a heavy-handed Israeli response in Gaza would engulf the Middle East in a broader war. She said, "Although our starting points are far apart, our interests overlap perfectly. That what is happening in Gaza does not become a much wider conflict, a religious war, a clash of civilizations." She, along with France and Germany, called on the European Union to impose ad hoc sanctions against Hamas and its supporters. In her words, the swift adoption of this sanctions regime will enable us to send a strong political message about the European Union's commitment against Hamas and our solidarity with Israel. Her tone towards Israel gradually became less supportive. Meloni faced pressure from a pro-Hamas, left-wing Muslim political coalition in Italy that organized pro-Hamas protests across the country. Hamas's ties to left-wing parties were revealed in a series of investigations in 2025. They coordinated and promoted anti-Israel riots and harassment of Jews. In December 2025, Italian authorities arrested 9 people linked to 3 charitable organizations on suspicion of raising millions of euros in funds for the Palestinian militant group Hamas. Among those arrested was Mohammed Hanoun, president of the Palestinian Association in Italy, prosecutors said, describing him as the head of the Italian cell of the Hamas organization. There is no clear line between attacks on Israel and anti-Semitic harassment. For a recent example, let's go back to 1944. Italy had switched its allegiance. Mussolini was out of the picture, and Italy was now fighting with the Allies. One Allied unit that fought enthusiastically was the 5,000-man Jewish Brigade. They were pitted against the Germans and fought ferociously. In April 2026, Italian leaders invited descendants of that brigade to participate in the Milan Liberation Day March, which celebrated the expulsion of German forces from Italy. This was not new. The children and now grandchildren of the brigade marched proudly, hoisting placards bearing the Star of David. But in 2026, things were different. Thousands of Italians from the far-left pro-Hamas coalition descended on the brigade's marchers, blocked their path, and began hurling curses and insults, including,
"Zionists out of Milan!
Long live Hitler!"
You're lucky you're not so bars.
Police required the brigade marchers to leave the parade and disband. The stated reason was that their presence posed a menace to public safety. Emanuele Fiano, a Jewish former Italian MP, said bluntly, "We were kicked out. I can't describe it any other way." For Emanuele Fiano, an Italian politician and former president of the Jewish community of Milan, this was his 50th march. His first had been with his father, carrying signs about the concentration camps. This is one example among many that underscores tensions between Muslims and non-Muslims in Italy and across the continent. Muslims have become a strong political bloc, and Italian authorities have grown increasingly sensitive to issues that offend Muslims. Pork is one such issue. Some of the tensions appear almost comical, but they add up to create an undercurrent of social friction. For example, in Padua, Muslim leaders demanded that a plastic pig displayed in a delicatessens window be removed. A Muslim elder declared that the presence of a pig was inappropriate. The deli's proprietor responded that the offending swine promoted his pork sandwiches. The pig is yellow, stationary, and clearly a facsimile of a real pig. It could not be mistaken for a living pig. While many Muslims declared that the pig was, in their words, in poor taste, the deli owner has stood his ground and said it will stay where it is. As for the courts, they have ruled that there is no legal basis for defenestrating the pig. As of this writing, the standoff continues. On a related note, there are reports of young Italian women strolling with leashed pet pigs. What gives? Muslims traditionally consider pigs unclean, so these women believe walking with a pig keeps away predatory male attention. Videos flooded social media, showing women confidently walking their pigs down the street. Some even dressed them in pink bows. But some investigators have dismissed stories about leashed pigs in Muslim areas of European cities, particularly in France, as fake news. A reporter from MSN followed a woman walking a pig in Paris, but she could not confirm any connection to Islam. The reporter speculated that these pigtails were hoaxes by Europeans who disliked Muslims. These false claims were barbs of soft aggression meant to stir resentment against Muslims. The only confirmed strolling pet pigs in Italy were Dior the piglet and Hansel the lamb, which is an odd name for a pig. Real or not, funny or not, the angst over pigs is another example of cultural friction in Europe today. What to do about these cultural tensions? In October 2025, Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni proposed a series of nationwide laws to address the immigration challenge. She looked to municipal regulations in Italy as models for broader laws. First, the Islamic face covering would be banned. Under the draft legislation, individuals found violating the ban could face fines ranging from €300 to €3,000. This is proposed for security reasons. Criminals hide behind face masks, and clever lawbreakers could pose as burqa-clad women. Second, coerced marriages would be banned. Italian leaders announced that they would protect women, particularly girls, from being forced to marry men they were not attracted to. Third, radical clerics could be expelled more easily. In October 2024, Italian authorities expelled a Pakistani imam, Zulfikar Khan, who had publicly endorsed Hamas and disseminated hateful rhetoric. Fourth, there have been municipal bans on prayer gatherings. Some leaders view these gatherings as an expression of collective political power and as an obstruction to vehicle and pedestrian traffic. A fifth and challenging suggestion is to promote European beachwear as Muslim swimming attire, particularly the burkini. Meloni called fully draped women swimmers. She characterized clothes swimming as an unacceptable form of Islamization, threatening community standards. Related to this is the sixth plan, which involves canceling women-only pool events. A privately organized pool party for Muslim women in Limbiate was canceled in July 2023 after a politician labeled the event a female segregation party. The cancellation reflected a national concern that Islamic migration is increasing male-female segregation after much progress has been made in breaking down sex barriers. The seventh plan is to restrict mosque expansion. Authorities in cities throughout Italy are concerned about large and small mosques mushrooming throughout the country. This bill would restrict the conversion of garages and warehouses into mosques. Will all of these proposals be turned into law, and will they be enforced? This is the subject of future podcasts. Perhaps the most alarming concern is violence and its place in Muslim-non-Muslim relations in Europe. Some recent killings illustrate the difficulty of determining how much of this violence is connected to religion. One example concerns a North African migrant who decapitated a homeless woman in Florence. This may have nothing to do with Islam. Italian police described the suspect as a young man from North Africa and known to suffer from mental health problems, and said the pair were seeing each other and shared a makeshift shelter in the area. What were his motives? We don't know, despite having read several articles. By all accounts, he was a drug-addled homeless criminal. His motives may have had nothing to do with his religion. However, the police's statements do not address this issue. Robert Spencer, a critic of Islam, opined
that the claim of mental illness would be significantly more credible if it weren't the fallback excuse that European authorities so frequently use for jihad activity. They do not admit the existence of Islamic jihad, and many have decided to classify jihadis as mentally ill. This does not, however, make the global jihad disappear.
This concludes this episode of Jihad and the World. Hamas's connection to Europe is explored in greater detail in our forthcoming Cauldron of Terror, Hamas, Israel, and the World, available for purchase in summer 2026. Nothing in this or any of our podcasts reflects the official position of the United States government. Until our next podcast, thank you for listening, and goodbye from Kensington Security Consulting.